My name is Destiny Williams, and for 2 years, I served tables at the Golden Fork Steakhouse on the edge of downtown Atlanta. For 2 years, I learned to read the room before I even stepped foot in it. I could tell which tables would tip well, which ones would linger too long over dessert, and which customers I needed to avoid. But there was one customer I could never avoid. One man who sat at the same corner booth every Thursday night. One man whose eyes followed me across the dining room like I was prey. And one night, I discovered exactly what he had been doing with his phone under the table while I took his order. What I found made my blood turn to ice. What I did next made him wish he had never walked into that restaurant. But before I tell you what happened, I need you to understand something. The manager knew. He knew from the very beginning. And when I finally showed him the proof, when I finally demanded he do something, he looked me in the eye and said words that still echo in my head to this day. He said, "Maybe you should wear longer skirts." That was the moment everything changed. That was the moment I stopped being a victim and started being a witness. And the evidence I collected over the next 3 months would destroy not just one man, but an entire restaurant's reputation. Before I continue with this story, I want to ask you something. Write in the comments below which city or country you are watching from right now. I would love to know where this story is reaching. And while you are there, tell me, have you ever experienced a situation where someone blamed you for something that was done to you? Have you ever been told to change yourself instead of the person causing harm being held accountable? Share your experience in the comments. Your story matters, and you are not alone. Also, please hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and if you know someone who needs to hear this story, someone who has been through something similar, please share this video with them. Now, let me take you back to the beginning. The Golden Fork Steakhouse was one of those places that looked better than it actually was. Dark wood paneling, brass fixtures, white tablecloths that hid years of wine stains. The kind of restaurant where businessmen brought clients to impress them and husbands brought wives to apologize for something. I had been working there since I was 23 years old. 2 years of late nights, aching feet, and smiles that never quite reached my eyes. 2 years of learning that the customer was always right, even when the customer was dead wrong. My manager was a man named Gerald Patterson. He was 52 years old, balding in a way he tried to hide with a comb-over that fooled no one, and he had been running the Golden Fork for 15 years. Gerald believed in three things: profit margins, repeat customers, and keeping his mouth shut when it mattered. I learned that last part the hard way. The man at the corner booth was named Victor Harrington. I learned his name from the reservation book, from the credit card receipts, from the whispered conversations between the hostesses who warned new servers to stay away from table 12 on Thursday nights. He was 61 years old, wealthy, and a regular. Every Thursday at 7 o'clock like clockwork, he would arrive in an expensive suit, order the same ribeye steak medium rare, drink exactly 3 glasses of bourbon, and watch me. Not the other servers. Me. I noticed it my first week on the job. The way his eyes tracked my movements. The way he always requested my section. The way he smiled when I approached his table. A smile that made my skin crawl. But I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself I was reading too much into it. I told myself that a man his age, a man of his status, would never risk everything just to stare at a server. I was wrong. The first incident happened on a Tuesday night in March. It was not even his usual night. I was covering for another server who had called in sick, working a section I normally avoided. When I walked past the bar, I saw him sitting there, alone, watching. I felt his eyes on me the entire shift. Every time I bent down to clear a table, every time I reached up to grab something from the top shelf, I could feel him staring. But it was not until I was walking past his bar stool that I noticed it. His phone was in his hand, held low, angled upward. toward me. I stopped. I looked at him. He smiled that same smile. "Just checking my messages," he said, his voice smooth as oil on water. I nodded, walked away, and told myself I had imagined it. I had not imagined it. But that was not the moment I discovered the truth. That moment came 3 months later, on a Thursday night in June. And what I found that night was worse than anything I could have imagined, but I am getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you what happened in between. For 3 months, Victor Harrington sat at table 12 every Thursday night. For 3 months, he requested me specifically, left generous tips, and always had his phone in his hand. Gerald loved him. Of course he did. Victor spent $200 every visit. He never complained about the food. He never sent anything back. He was, in Gerald's words, the perfect customer. One night in April, I finally said something. It was after the dinner rush. The restaurant was nearly empty. I found Gerald in his office, counting receipts. "Gerald," I said, standing in the doorway, "I need to talk to you about the customer at table 12. He did not look up. "What about him?" "I think he has been taking pictures of me. Inappropriate pictures." Gerald's hands stopped moving. He looked up at me with an expression I could not quite read. "Pictures? What kind of pictures?" I felt my face flush. When I bend down to take orders or clear plates, I think he angles his phone under the table. I think he might be taking pictures up my skirt. Gerald stared at me for a long moment. Then he laughed. A short, dismissive laugh that hit me like a slap. "Destiny, come on. Do you know who Victor Harrington is? He is on the board of 3 different companies. He plays golf with the mayor. He is not some pervert taking upskirt photos in a steakhouse. But Gerald, I have seen his phone. I have seen the way he held up his hand. Let me ask you something. Has he ever touched you?" "No, but..." "Has he ever said anything inappropriate?" "Not directly, but the way he looks at me." He leaned back in his chair and folded his arms. "So, a wealthy, respected businessman looks at you, and you assume he is a criminal? Have you considered that maybe you are misreading the situation? Maybe you are flattered by the attention and do not know how to handle it." I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. Flattered? I am not. "Look," Gerald said, his voice softening in a way that made it worse. "Victor Harrington has been coming here for 10 years. He tips well, he brings other wealthy clients, and he has never once caused a problem. If you are uncomfortable, maybe think about what message you are sending." "What message I am sending?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "The uniform." He gestured vaguely. "The way you walk. You are a pretty girl, Destiny. Sometimes pretty girls attract attention. That is just how it is. Maybe wear longer skirts." I stood there, frozen, unable to believe what I was hearing. "Are you saying this is my fault?" "I am saying you are making a big deal out of nothing." Gerald turned back to his receipts. "Now, I have work to do. Unless you have actual proof, I suggest you drop this." Actual proof. Those 2 words would echo in my mind for the next 2 months, because I was going to get proof. And when I did, Gerald was going to regret every single word he said that night. But that was not all. What I did not know yet was that I was not the only one. There were others. Other servers who had noticed the same thing. Other women who had been told the same excuses. And when I finally discovered the truth about Victor Harrington, I would uncover a pattern of harassment that went back years. But I am getting ahead of myself again. Let me tell you what happened next. After that conversation with Gerald, I went home and cried. Not because I was sad, but because I was furious. Furious at Victor for what he was doing. Furious at Gerald for dismissing me. And furious at myself for not having proof. That night, I made a decision. If no one was going to believe me, I would have to believe myself. And if no one was going to document this, I would have to document it myself. I started keeping a log. Every Thursday night, I wrote down everything: the time Victor arrived, what he was wearing, where he sat, when he held his phone, how he angled it. Every detail, no matter how small. April 18th, 7:03 p.m. Victor Harrington arrived. Dark gray suit, red tie. Sat at table 12 as usual. Ordered ribeye, medium rare, 3 bourbons. Phone in hand under a table at 7:47 p.m. while I took dessert order. Phone angled upward when I bent to refill water at 8:12 p.m. April 25th, 7:15 p.m. Victor arrived late. Blue suit, same behavior. Phone under table at 7:52 p.m., 8:03 p.m., and 8:31 p.m. Made direct eye contact while holding phone at low angle. Smiled. May the 2nd, 7:01 p.m. Victor arrived early, requested me specifically even though another server had been assigned to table 12. Gerald reassigned me to his section. Phone behavior observed at 7:33 p.m., 7:58 p.m., 8:14 p.m., and 8:27 p.m. Week after week, I documented everything, my notebook filled with dates, times, and descriptions. But I still did not have proof. I still did not have anything that would make Gerald listen. That changed on June 13th. It was a Thursday night, busier than usual because of some corporate event in the private dining room. I was running between tables, barely keeping up with orders, when I saw Victor watching me from table 12. His phone was in his hand, as usual. I took a deep breath and approached his table. "Good evening, Mr. Harrington. What can I get you tonight?" He smiled that smile, the usual sweetheart, and maybe a little extra attention. "You have been so busy tonight." I forced a smile, wrote down his order, and turned to leave. As I walked away, I heard a sound. A small electronic sound. A camera shutter. I stopped. I turned around slowly. Victor was looking at his phone, scrolling through something, that same smile on his face. He did not notice me watching. He did not notice me walking back toward the table. He did not notice anything until I was standing right behind him, looking over his shoulder at his phone screen. And what I saw made my heart stop. There were photos. Dozens of them. Photos of me. Photos of other servers. All taken from below. All showing exactly what you would expect photos taken from that angle to show. 2 years of photos. Organized by date. Some had names. Destiny. Thursday. Blonde one. New girl. He had been doing this for years. To me, to others. And nobody had stopped him. I think I made a sound. A gasp, maybe. Or a choke. Because Victor turned around, saw me standing there, and his face went white. Now, what happened next could have gone very differently. I could have screamed. I could have grabbed his phone. I could have caused a scene that would have gotten me fired and given him time to delete everything. But I did not do any of those things. Instead, I did something that surprised even me. I smiled. I leaned down, close to his ear, and whispered, "Enjoy your dinner, Mr. Harrington." And then I walked away. I walked to the break room. I pulled out my own phone, and I called the police. But that was just the beginning, because what happened when the police arrived was something I never could have predicted. And what Gerald did next proved that he had been protecting Victor all along. But let me tell you how that night unfolded. I was shaking when I made the call. My fingers could barely press the numbers. 911, what is your emergency? "I need to report a crime in progress," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I am at the Golden Fork Steakhouse on Peachtree Street. There is a man here who has been taking illegal photographs of servers without their consent. I have witnessed evidence on his phone. The dispatcher asked me questions. Was I in danger? No. Was the suspect still on the premises? Yes. Could I stay on the line? Yes." I waited in the break room, phone pressed to my ear, watching the seconds tick by. Through the door, I could hear the normal sounds of the restaurant. Clinking glasses. Conversation. Laughter. None of them knew what was about to happen. The police arrived in 12 minutes. 2 officers, 1 male, 1 female. They came through the front door like they belonged there, calm and professional. I met them at the hostess stand. "I am the one who called," I said quietly. "The man is at table 12, corner booth." The female officer nodded. "Can you show us?" I led them through the dining room. Heads turned. Conversations paused. Gerald came rushing out of his office, his face a mixture of confusion and alarm. "What is going on? Officers, is there a problem?" "We received a report of illegal photography," the male officer said. "We need to speak with the gentleman at table 12. Gerald's face went pale. "That is ridiculous. That is Victor Harrington. He is a respected—" "Sir," the female officer interrupted. "Please step aside." Victor saw them coming. I watched his expression change from confusion to recognition to fear. He reached for his phone, but the female officer was faster. "Sir, please do not touch that. I need you to stand up slowly." "This is outrageous," Victor sputtered. "I am a customer. I have not done anything wrong." "Sir, we have received a report that you have been taking unauthorized photographs of staff members. We need to see your phone. I do not consent to a search. That is my private property." The officers exchanged a look. "Sir, you can either show us your phone voluntarily, or we can obtain a warrant. Either way, we will be examining that device tonight." The dining room had gone completely silent. Every customer was watching. Every server was watching. Gerald was standing by the bar, his face a shade of gray I had never seen before. Victor looked at me. His eyes were cold, calculating, and then something shifted in his expression. Something that looked almost like amusement. "You," he said softly. "You did this." I did not respond. I did not need to. "Fine," he said, handing his phone to the officer. "Take it. You will not find anything." But he was wrong. He was so wrong. Because while Victor thought he was clever, while he thought he had hidden his tracks, he had made one crucial mistake. He had saved the photos to his cloud account, and when the forensic technicians examined his phone, they found not dozens but hundreds of images. Images dating back 5 years. Images of servers from the Golden Fork. Images of women at other restaurants, other businesses, other public places. Victor Harrington was not just a pervert. He was a predator, and he had been operating in plain sight for half a decade. But that discovery would come later. That night, in the restaurant, all I knew was that the officers were taking Victor seriously. They were asking him questions. They were examining his phone. And for the first time in 2 years, someone was listening to me. Then Gerald made his move. "Officers," he said, stepping forward. "I think there has been a misunderstanding. Mr. Harrington is a valued customer. He would never do something like this. This young lady," he gestured toward me, "has had some conflicts with Mr. Harrington in the past. I believe she may be making false accusations." I felt my blood run cold. He was trying to discredit me. Right there, in front of the police, in front of everyone, he was calling me a liar. But I was ready for this. "Actually, officer," I said, pulling my notebook from my apron pocket, "I have been documenting Mr. Harrington's behavior for the past 3 months. Dates, times, specific observations. I also have text messages from other servers who have noticed similar behavior." The female officer took my notebook and flipped through it. "This is very detailed," she said. "You documented all of this yourself?" "Every Thursday for 12 weeks, I confirmed." The male officer turned to Gerald. "Sir, did this employee ever report concerns about Mr. Harrington to you?" Gerald hesitated, and in that hesitation, I saw his entire defense crumble. "She may have mentioned something," he admitted, "but it was vague. She did not have proof. I told him exactly what was happening, I said, my voice rising. I told him Victor was taking pictures under my skirt, and he told me to wear longer skirts. The female officer's expression hardened. Is that true? Gerald's mouth opened and closed. He looked at Victor, then at me, then at the officers. He looked like a man watching his entire world fall apart. I may have suggested, he stammered, that she consider her uniform choices. That is not the same as. Sir, the male officer interrupted. We are going to need you to come down to the station and give a statement. All of you. And that was how it ended. With Victor Harrington in handcuffs, with Gerald Patterson following behind in his own car, looking like he might be sick. With me, sitting in the back of a police cruiser, finally telling someone the whole truth. But this was far from over, because the investigation that followed would reveal something even more disturbing. Gerald had known about Victor's behavior for years. He had received complaints from other servers. He had seen suspicious behavior himself, and he had done nothing. Worse than nothing. He had actively protected Victor. He had shuffled servers to different sections when they complained. He had let go of employees who pushed too hard for action. He had created an environment where a predator could operate freely, week after week, year after year. And when the lawyers got involved, when the lawsuits started flying, Gerald Patterson would face consequences he never imagined possible. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you what happened at the police station. I sat in that interview room for 3 hours. I told them everything. About the staring, about the phone, about what I saw on Victor's screen, about Gerald's dismissal of my concerns, about the notebook I had been keeping. The detective, a woman named Sandra Reyes, listened without interrupting. She took notes. She asked clarifying questions. She treated me like my experience mattered. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. Ms. Williams, she said, you are not the first person to report Victor Harrington. My heart stopped. What? We have had complaints before, women from other establishments. But no one has ever had documentation like yours. No one has ever been willing to press charges. I stared at her. You mean he has done this before? And nobody stopped him? Detective Reyes sighed. Mr. Harrington is a wealthy man with powerful connections. Previous complainants have been discouraged from pursuing action. Some received settlements. Some were threatened. Some simply gave up. But you, she looked at my notebook. You documented everything. You built a case without even knowing you were building one. I felt something shift inside me. Not pride exactly. More like recognition. I had been right to trust myself when no one else did. What happens now? I asked. Now we get a warrant for his cloud storage, the detective said. If your account is accurate, and I believe it is, we are going to find a lot more than what was on his phone. She was right. 3 days later, the forensic analysis came back. 437 images, spanning 5 years, taken at 17 different locations. The Golden Fork was just one of many hunting grounds. Victor Harrington was arrested on 43 counts of voyeurism, 16 counts of invasion of privacy, and 8 counts of disseminating intimate images without consent. Some of those images had been shared in private online forums. Some had been sent to other men with similar predilections. The man who sat at table 12 every Thursday night was part of a network, a community of predators who traded images of women like baseball cards. And Gerald Patterson? His story was just beginning. The day after Victor's arrest, I received a call from a lawyer. Not a criminal lawyer, a civil one. Her name was Diana Okonkwo, and she specialized in employment law. Ms. Williams, she said, I have been following the Harrington case. I believe you may have grounds for additional legal action against your employer. I had been expecting something like this. I had been doing research of my own, late nights on my laptop, learning about hostile work environments and employer liability and negligent retention. Tell me more, I said. Diana explained that under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act and Georgia state law, employers have a duty to protect employees from harassment when they fail to act on complaints. When they create conditions that allow harassment to continue, they can be held liable. Gerald Patterson did not just ignore my concerns, Diana said. He actively discouraged you from pursuing them. He victim blamed you. He continued to assign you to the harassers section. He may have even protected the harasser from consequences. That is textbook hostile work environment. I thought about the other servers, the ones who had warned me about Table 12, the ones who had noticed the same things I noticed. I am not the only one, I told Diana. There are others. She paused. If you can connect me with them, we might be looking at something bigger than an individual complaint. We might be looking at a pattern. Over the next 2 weeks, I talked to every current and former server I could find who had worked at the Golden Fork. I found 7 women who had noticed Victor's behavior, 4 who had complained to Gerald, 2 who had been let go shortly after making complaints, and 1, a woman named Keisha, who had found photos of herself on Victor's phone 2 years before I did. She had reported it to Gerald. He had told her she was imagining things. A month later, she was fired for supposedly poor performance. I was a good server, Keisha told me, her voice cracking. I had the highest tips in my section. But after I complained about that man, suddenly everything I did was wrong. Wrong attitude, wrong uniform, wrong way of talking to customers. They were looking for any excuse to get rid of me. Her story was not unique. Neither was mine. We were all pieces of a puzzle that, when assembled, painted a damning picture of institutional failure. Diana Okonkwo filed our lawsuit against the Golden Fork Steakhouse and Gerald Patterson personally on July 15th. The lawsuit alleged negligent supervision, hostile work environment, retaliation against employees who reported harassment, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The total amount we were seeking was $3.2 million. The news picked up the story immediately. Restaurant manager allegedly protected customer predator for years. The headlines were everywhere. Local news, national coverage, social media exploded. By the end of July, 4 more women had come forward. Not servers from the Golden Fork, but women who had been photographed by Victor at other locations. They had seen the news. They had recognized themselves in his cloud storage when the police released the inventory of images, and they wanted to tell their stories. The case against Victor expanded. The case against Gerald deepened. And I became something I never expected to be. A voice for women who had been silenced for years. But it was not easy. The defense lawyers were brutal. They dug into my past, looking for anything they could use against me. They questioned my motivations. They suggested I was after money, after fame, after revenge for some imagined slight. In depositions, Gerald's lawyer asked me questions designed to humiliate me. Is it true that you flirted with customers to increase your tips? Is it true that your uniform was tighter than regulation allowed? Is it true that you smiled at Mr. Harrington, made eye contact with him, engaged in friendly conversation? As if smiling at a customer made it okay for him to violate me. As if being professional at my job was an invitation for abuse. I answered every question calmly. I had my documentation. I had my evidence. I had the truth. And on October 3rd, the truth finally came out in court. Victor Harrington pleaded guilty to 31 counts of voyeurism as part of a plea deal. He was sentenced to 8 years in prison and required to register as a sex offender for life. At his sentencing, I gave a victim impact statement. I stood in that courtroom, looked at the man who had been watching me for 2 years and told him exactly what he had taken from me. You stole my sense of safety, I said. You stole my ability to do my job without fear. You stole my trust in the systems that were supposed to protect me. But you did not steal my voice. And you did not steal my determination to make sure you never do this to anyone else again. Victor did not look at me during my statement. He kept his eyes on the table, shoulders slumped, the arrogance finally drained out of him. When I finished, the judge thanked me for my courage. She said that my documentation had been instrumental in building the case. She said that because of me, other women would be safer. It was the first time in 2 years that someone in a position of authority had validated what I had experienced. But the civil case was still pending, and Gerald Patterson was still fighting. He claimed he had no knowledge of Victor's behavior. He claimed I had never made a clear complaint. He claimed the whole thing was a misunderstanding blown out of proportion by greedy plaintiffs and sensationalist media. His lies fell apart on November 12th. That was the day Keisha took the stand in our civil trial. She described reporting Victor's behavior to Gerald in detail. She described his dismissal. She described being fired a month later. And then she produced something none of us knew she had: an audio recording. 2 years earlier, when Keisha confronted Gerald about Victor, she had been recording on her phone. She had not thought about it since she lost her job. But when she heard about the lawsuit, she dug through her old files and found it. On that recording, clear as day, Gerald Patterson said, "Look, Victor is a valuable customer. Whatever you think you saw, you did not see it. Drop this, or I will make your life very difficult." The recording was played in open court. Gerald's face went white. His lawyer asked for a recess. The judge denied it. 2 days later, the Golden Fork's parent company offered to settle. They agreed to pay $2.4 million, distributed among all the plaintiffs. They agreed to implement mandatory harassment training. They agreed to create an anonymous reporting system. And they agreed to terminate Gerald Patterson immediately, with no severance and no reference. Gerald tried to fight his termination. He tried to claim wrongful dismissal. But the evidence was overwhelming. The recordings, the testimony, the pattern of complaints and cover-ups. No lawyer in Atlanta would touch his case. Last I heard, Gerald Patterson was working at a car wash in Macon. He tells people he was forced out of the restaurant industry by false accusations. Nobody believes him. As for me, I took my share of the settlement and went back to school. I am studying to become a paralegal now. I want to help other women who have been through what I went through. I want to be the person in the system who listens, who believes, who fights. Sometimes I think about that night in Gerald's office, the night he told me to wear longer skirts, the night he made me feel like I was the problem. If I had listened to him, if I had stayed quiet, if I had convinced myself that I was imagining things, Victor Harrington might still be sitting at table 12 every Thursday night. He might still be taking pictures. He might still be adding to that collection of 437 images. But I did not stay quiet. I documented. I reported. I refused to let anyone make me doubt what I knew to be true. And when the system failed me, I built my own case, one notebook entry at a time. The Golden Fork Steakhouse closed 6 months after the settlement. The scandal had destroyed its reputation. Customers did not want to eat at the restaurant that had protected a predator. The building sat empty for a while, a ghost of what it used to be. Last month, I drove past the address. There is a new restaurant there now, a family-owned place with bright windows and flowers in the planters. I do not know if they treat their employees well. I do not know if they listen when someone reports harassment. But I hope they do. I hope they learned from what happened. I hope they understand that protecting predators protects no one, because the truth always comes out eventually. And when it does, no amount of money, no amount of connections, no amount of victim blaming can stop it. Gerald told me to wear longer skirts. The police told Victor to wear handcuffs. And I learned that justice does not come from staying quiet. It comes from speaking up, even when no one wants to listen, especially when no one wants to listen. If you made it to the end, thank you for listening. If you have experienced harassment, if someone made you feel unsafe, if you were told it was your fault, know that you are not alone. Document everything. Tell someone you trust. Never let anyone convince you that you imagined it. Your experience is truly valid. Your voice matters. The people who tried to silence you will face consequences. That is not revenge. That is truly justice.